So now it's crystal ball time. We can't have a conversation without having a crystal ball. So you have it with you, okay? What are the real where do you see the industry going forward, and what are the key trends? Because those trends are things that our audience needs to be aware of, so they can take advantage of.
Yeah, I actually don't have a crystal ball,
Oh,
but I do have a Ouija board.
Oh, good. That's almost as good. Almost as good.
So I think that, hopefully I'm not one of those guys that just sees 2 points, draws a line between them, and sees a trend, but maybe not.
Yeah.
And some of these things I think are going to be obvious to some of our listeners, because in the pay TV industry, it's kind of like watching a soap opera.
Yeah.
You can miss it for a year and still be right on track after watching one episode.
Yeah.
So first thing is there's going to be continued consolidation. But I think most of the consolidation that gets visibility is really at the operator level. And I think consolidation is only going to be limited by government regulation.
Right.
The FCC,
We're getting close to that now.
the Justice Department, things like that. So some of the most visible things that have recently happened is AT&T buying DirecTV, Comcast buying NBC Universal, Time Warner and Charter trying to merge up. And it's actually, although there's a lot of negative press around this is bad for the consumer, I think the dynamics actually exist where the new entrants, the Google TVs and the Apple TVs, and I think Netflix is a smaller company but still part of that new entrant ecosystem, that isn't taken into account by the Justice Department and the FCC. So there actually is a need for consolidation, and I think at the end of the day we're probably going to continue to see more. But there's not only consolidation at the operator level, which gets the most visibility, there's consolidation within the ecosystem, within the supply chain.
Right.
So if you look at historically when Scientific Atlanta was bought by Cisco and General Instruments was bought by Motorola, you've seen an acceleration in that over the last few years where Motorola Home was bought by Aris. Now Aris is working to buy Pace. We're going to see continued consolidation there. Cisco bought NDS, a major system software operator within the pay TV industry. And we're seeing it, in my former business, in the chip business, with guys like Avago now buying Broadcom. I mean, Broadcom is a very big company.
Yeah.
So you're not seeing just little mergers and acquisitions like a big company buying up a little technology play here and there.
Big buying big.
You're seeing big buying big, exactly.
But that'll peter out.
I think it will, but I think that over the next 5 to 10 years, that's going to continue to be a trend. And we're also seeing it internationally as well with the likes of Liberty Global and Liberty Media buying up international properties, News Corp buying up international properties. So I think that whenever there's a trend, there's typically an opportunity around that.
Yeah.
And what the pay TV operators are doing, because it is a more mature business, they're trying to find ways to squeeze out costs. And you squeeze out costs through synergies and things like that. So things that can help streamline that process are definitely opportunities in pay TV. I think the second big thing, big trend is going to be the strictly imposed restrictions on CapEx and OpEx at the operator. I think they're going to get even more strict. I think this is going to be really tough. It's going, because revenue's not growing at an accelerated pace, spending has to be cut or tightened or whatever. And that's going to be very limited. And frequently, in my experience with pay TV operators, they manage this very tightly on a line-by-line basis. Yeah. So even if they're, say, under budget on infrastructure equipment, if they're at budget on set-top boxes, they're not going to move money from this bucket to this bucket to buy more set-top boxes.
Because the bankers are in control of that.
Exactly, because the finance departments
but
is heavily in control
here's the problem
of the
with
operators.
That. Given our previous discussion about the constant need for innovation, doesn't this reminds me of Clayton Christensen's book, The Innovator's Dilemma, right? Which says that, and this is really actually almost like a case study out of that book that says you have a big giant companies that it's hard to innovate for all those reasons he talks about. But now you're layering on top of that, this consolidation is a lot of it driven by economics. That's going to further constrain R&D. So that's going to make it almost impossible for them to do anything substantially, on their own, but they have to. So what do?
Well, the big company is because they're making room by some of the consolidation, like Comcast.
Yeah.
Comcast actually is innovating, and you're going to see kind of the haves and the have-nots to some extent.
Yeah.
I think Comcast even as big as they are, it's tough for them to innovate in all the areas they want to, but they do spend a lot on R&D, but that is continuing to be tightened.
Yeah.
But the big companies want to be in control,
Yeah.
more of the total solution, and that's an example of a Comcast. On the flip side, to your point, there is a big opportunity for suppliers to pick up innovation on an outsourced basis.
Right.
And this has always been the case in the industry, but I think it's going to be even more so going forward. But it's managing that balance, making sure the customer feels like they're enough in control,
Right.
but at the same time, you need to control your intellectual property. You
Yeah.
need to make sure that you don't get commoditized and marginalized in the process. And that's a delicate balance. But I do think that there's an opportunity there. That's why I strongly believe that focusing on a beachhead first, ideally with a small
Yeah.
operator or a new entrant, is very helpful in
Yeah.
penetrating pay
Because
TV.
it reduces the complexity.
It
So
reduces your risk,
Yeah.
of your ideas being usurped and
Yeah.
those types of things.
True. Yeah. So this is for our listeners, it's really almost like a yin and a yang. You have to exploit the fact that these big operators aren't really truly innovative, but you can't put it in their face. You've got to make it available to them, but you have to make it in an available way where they think it's a lower risk, lower cost way to do it. So that's really almost a tight wire act, and it's kind of scary, frankly, a little intimidating. But I think I hear well, you're an optimistic person anyway, but I hear some hope. I hear hope in there. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing this. I mean,